One thing we're told 24/7 as NBA fans is to appreciate greatness. And where I see this the most is on social media. Now this phrase, in theory, is fantastic. But when it comes to the appreciate greatness crowd, it's a one-way street. As for a lot of these so-called NBA fans, when they say appreciate greatness, it only applies to the modern NBA.
Watch Larry Bird try to get his game off. Watch this. Garbage! I don't want to hear nothing else about Larry Bird. Garbage!
And one player, of course, who catches a lot of heat from current-day NBA fans is Larry Bird. And if you watch his highlights, watch his game, just look at him as a basketball player. Doesn't really fit the bill as a great talent, just off the eye test. I mean, guys like Dr. J, Dominique Wilkins, high flyers in the 80s, they fit more the bill of what a great NBA player should look like and how they should play. And despite Bird beating both those guys in the playoffs, outplaying them numerous times, Larry Bird by the eye test doesn't get as much credit as he deserves. As looking at fans today, what they say about Bird: too slow, can't jump, slow jump shot, and couldn't play defense. Now, even back in the 80s, nearly 40 years ago, people said the exact same thing about Bird in his prime. But looking at today's era, in the pace and space era, 35-43s per game, Larry Bird's skill set quite literally is built for the modern NBA. And what we're currently witnessing in Nikola Jokic is a slower and quite frankly fatter version of Larry Bird. I mean, when this year concludes, Jokic, he could have 2 championships and 3 MVPs in 4 seasons. I mean, that is total domination by a guy who isn't even a top 100 athlete in today's era. And looking at Jokic's overall game, the passing, playmaking, scoring, how efficient he is while not being a great athlete, it debunks numerous narratives used against Larry Bird. As one thing I hear all the time is that current day players are, quote, bigger, faster, and stronger. Now, Jokic himself just this year has debunked that narrative, as versus the Lakers in 3 games, playing Anthony Davis, an elite athlete, crazy wingspan, lateral quickness, 29 points, 12 boards, 9 assists on 58% shooting. If you were playing NBA 2K, when you build the perfect defender, Anthony Davis is the guy you would build. But even AD, being AD, still gets embarrassed by Jokic, who isn't half the athlete Larry Bird was in his prime. And just kind of speaking in generalities, when it comes to basketball, this game since day one has been about skill. Yes, being athletic is important to some players, but at the end of the day, skill determines how good you are and where you rank among the best players. I mean, someone like Derrick Jones Jr., an athletic freak, could throw down windmills, reverse dunks. I mean, even Derrick Jones Jr. had to reinvent himself as an actual basketball player, because if he didn't, he'd be like Terrence Ferguson, a great athlete with little or no skill. And LeBron back in 2017, he spoke on this exact same topic, saying there are current players in the NBA who, quote, do not know how to play basketball.
You're telling me there are players that play in the NBA that don't, professional players that don't know their role?
I'll take it one step further. There's a lot of players in the NBA that don't know how to play basketball.
They don't, and they in the NBA do not know how to play basketball.
But they can play basketball.
I know how to play basketball. I can't play. There is guys on high level making millions.
There's some on the All-Star team right now.
On the All-Star team.
Wow.
Bad
efficiency.
And when it comes to the current group of NBA players, the guys in the next era, I mentioned and spoke about numerous times. This era of players, they're great athletes, but in terms of fundamental skill, severely lacking. Now, what do you blame for that? Maybe skipping college, the high school game being a joke, AAU. There's a lot of stuff you can blame for lack of development with American players. But even guys in this era who are coaching, they're seeing the exact same thing that a lot of us see. Great athletes, not great skill. And looking back at Jokic this year, he's in his 9th NBA season, which coincidentally was Larry Bird's last year in his prime in 1988. And that's one thing with Bird that is quite sad. This guy's prime got cut short after only 9 seasons. And in terms of longevity, doesn't have that in the slightest. And when it comes to longevity, I've said it 1,000 times. ESPN, Twitter, Instagram, they're obsessed with longevity. And the stat I saw from ESPN is a typical ESPN stat, showing LeBron James having more total points than Larry Bird Magic combined. Now, ESPN's intention for this stat was to highlight LeBron James and boost him up. But when I see this stat, I look at Larry Bird, a guy who played 9 healthy years, in comparison to LeBron James, who's played 21, and think, how did someone like Bird manage 3 championships, 3 MVPs, only 1 less than LeBron in both those categories in nearly half the time? And despite Larry Bird having less than 22,000 career points, ranking 44th on that list all time, across the NBA, young fans, old fans, all regard this guy as a top 10 player in NBA history. And why I find that so special is looking at other NBA legends regarded as top 10 players of all time. You had LeBron James, 21 plus years, Kareem and Kobe played 20, Duncan and Shaq 19, and then Hakeem 18 seasons. The fact Bird in a decade's time won 3 championships, 3 MVPs, that is quite remarkable. And if you want to talk offensive peaks for small forwards or just players in general, Bird's all-around game was something special. The scoring, passing, efficiency, clutch time play, and impact on winning. Larry Bird checked all those boxes. And looking at the numbers, from 85 to 88, this guy, 28.1 points, nearly 10 boards, nearly 7 assists, on 51-41, and 90 splits. And like I said earlier, Larry Bird's prime was cut short at only age 31. As during 1988, at age 31, averaged 29.9 points, the highest in his career to that point. And still looking at prime Bird, those 4 years, on average, took 2.5 threes per game. Now, of course, compared to the modern day players, the modern day teams, that number is egregiously low. But looking at Bird's scoring, when he came into the NBA, many forget, he was a power forward and a double-double machine for a long time. And a lot of his points came at the rim, in the paint, off post-ups, and mid-range jump shots. For today's players, the mid-range game, in-between game, is virtually non-existent and a lost art. And once you get past that first line of defense that is so extended past the 3, that mid-range game becomes oh so valuable. And looking at Bird's own era, guys like Kareem, Mark Eaton, Moses Malone, among others, those guys in the paint gave Larry Bird hell. And while they did, his bigs back then had no 3-second rule. That rule single-handedly changed the NBA forever. Listen to Luka Doncic, a current NBA player, citing this one rule why NBA scoring is so much easier than past eras and European basketball.
You said that scoring 30 in the NBA was, hold on.
I know
you said scoring 30 in the NBA was way easier than scoring in Europe.
But when I said that, a lot of people didn't agree with me. It was like 2-3 years ago.
Yeah.
I think now they're starting to agree more and more. But I always say it's because of the rules. The 3 seconds in the paint in defense is huge. I don't think people realize how huge that is. Because, when I'm isoing, I watch the defender in the paint. So he got to go out at some point. So when he's going out, I try to attack. So that's a huge difference.
If Larry Bird in the early 80s was a walking 24-10 versus bigs in the paint who could camp there, what would he do in this era with a wide open paint that had the 3-second rule? And once again, looking back at that idiotic stat by ESPN, those types of funky stats, meaningless longevity stats, social media eats those up every day of the week. And like I said earlier, Larry Bird, when it comes to all-time scoring, he ranks 44th currently. And by the end of the 2030s, Giannis will pass him, Dame will pass him, Beal, PG, Anthony Davis, even Kyrie Irving. When this decade's over, Larry Bird will be top 50 in scoring, and despite that, will still be a top 10 player all time. Like I've said in numerous videos, when it comes to peak versus longevity, a player's peak is much more precise for judging how good they were and how effective they were as an NBA superstar. Someone's longevity, to a certain extent a good picture of them, but not the greatest way to evaluate a player and judge their career. So that right there is the end of the video. As always, thank you guys for watching, hope you enjoyed it. I'll see you next time.